we say hello to a good friend of mine, a good friend of the station. You watch him on SNY covering the Jets as a pre and post game analyst. He's on NBC as well, talking all things NFL and NFL draft, host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, and host of the Jets podcast Badlands. A lot of jobs, and he's awesome at all of them. Connor Rogers joins us now here on New York Game Day. Connor, it's Jake and Mike. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Great to talk to you as we wait out this snow and wait for the games.
That's right. So there is some Jets news. We'll start with that. We've been talking about it all morning on our show. What was your reaction, Connor, to the reports of the 7 assistant coaches that were let go by Aaron Glenn and some reporting on Tanner Engstrand's future that if he's remaining on the staff, which it sounds like he will not be the play caller as Glenn will look to hire someone else to be the offensive play caller.
Right. Well, some of it not so surprising whenever you have the kind of year that the Jets had in terms of the wins and loss column and statistically as well. There's always going to be turnover. It just depends at what level of the actual staff. I think the more surprising news, rather than a lot of the assistants that were completely let go, because they're going to be, of course, hiring a new defensive coordinator soon, so that defensive coordinator should have involvement of what his staff is going to look like in different areas. The bigger surprise to me, Jake, is that Tanner Engstrand reportedly might be, kind of reallocated here and most importantly, not calling the offensive plays. And what's, a little confusing to me about that is this is a young play caller that Aaron Glenn, of course, deemed worthy of bringing over with him from Detroit to run his offense. And in large part this year, he worked with Justin Fields, where the pass game, because of Fields, was a mess. And then Brady Cook, who was an undrafted free agent that, I don't think was a guy that was really on a ton of draft boards or expected to start NFL games, especially as a rookie this year. So Engstrand didn't have a lot to work with where it was difficult to evaluate him at times. I thought going and getting him a senior advisor that can work with him, and there's various names out there. Of course, we heard Frank Reich this morning, that could assist with him, especially maybe in some of the run game stuff. Greg Roman's out there. That would have made sense, but to take away play calling duties is a way bigger move, and I'm very curious to see where this goes next now under Aaron Glenn.
And thanks for joining us. What are your thoughts about how the defensive coordinator search is going?
It's been interesting, right? Because there wasn't a lot of noise, I think, on purpose about the 8 different guys that they've had interviews with, some of them younger, more inexperienced guys, and then you get the guys that have called defenses like Jim Leonard, which Jets fans know really well, a great Jet. Especially when you were here, Mike, and somebody that has done a lot of good things in the coaching world since his playing days have been over, both at the college level and then at the NFL level, where he's been a very important assistant on Sean Payton's staff in Denver. Now you look at Wink Martindale, who obviously has been flown in potentially for a final round of interviews here. Wink is a little bit more polarizing in a sense that the way things ended you had one really good year with the Giants. You had one year where the defense struggled and the team struggled for a variety of reasons. But I think the explosiveness of how that relationship ended was more eye-catching there. And then at Michigan, I know a lot of people like to throw out the raw numbers of his defense being more on the positive side, but that was a defense that struggled in some really big games this year. I mean, on our coverage at NBC, we had the USC game where, Lincoln Riley coached circles around his defense. You look at the Oklahoma game, you look at the Nebraska game where Dylan Raiola played pretty well against them. So you have to wonder what Wink has left in the tank, and maybe that would be better with NFL talent, but I understand people that would be really skeptical of that. So, and also I'm kind of curious, Aaron Glenn going with somebody like Wink. Wink should have the authority to call the entire defense. I think there's a lot of people on the outside that kind of want Aaron Glenn more involved after how things went with Steve Wilks' defense this year. So I'm very curious to see how this is finalized and what the actual cohesion plan is going into training camp.
Connor Rogers is with us here. Connor, staying with just the assistant coaches, right? Like what the challenge for Glenn to fill out his staff when the perception, fair or not, is that he's on the hot seat if they don't show major improvement in year 2. What's the level of difficulty to get legitimate assistant coaches to want to be on this staff?
Yeah, it can be hard when there's, we're going through a very unique NFL offseason that there was 10 openings, right? So with those 10 openings, there's a trickle effect of a lot of – now, some teams will retain the current staff member. You saw when Kevin Stefanski got the Falcons job that he retained Jeff Ulbrich. But a lot of those are going to be openings under that head coach. And very competitive places that not only will spend on assistant coaches but have a lot of hiring power because of where they are. And then you see somebody like the Chargers that they are going out there. They lose Jesse Minter to Baltimore. They move on from Greg Roman. But unless Mike McDaniel gets a head coaching job, they were able to land him as an offensive coordinator, and he's a highly sought-after offensive mind. I know it didn't work out as a head coach in Miami for a variety of reasons, but he's an excellent offensive play caller. So that makes it difficult for a situation like the Jets where things are a little foggy going into year two. Now, Aaron Glenn has played and coached in the league for a really long time, where you'd hope his connections play into his hands here to help out with this interview processes. But it's been a little bit of a long wait. It's pretty clear there were a couple of defensive coordinator options that did not want to interview for this job. It doesn't seem like they're waiting out Jim Leonard, barring a surprise, and that would be a nice surprise. And that would be a high-profile hire, but we don't know where that's going to land. So I think it's been very difficult for the Jets when you have a coach coming off a bad year and going into year two where things have to drastically change for there to be long-term job security. And I think that's why you're seeing somebody like Wink Martindale as a finalist who clearly just wants to get back into the NFL after having to give it a go at the college level for the last 2 years.
And then switching teams here, what are your thoughts on Coach Harbaugh's staff and how you see that coming together in the coming days?
Yeah, I mean, this is somebody that's what he's known for, right, is building coaching staffs. And when guys go get hired, you look at them, Mike McDonald goes on from that staff to go coach, do a great job in Seattle. So this is what Harbaugh's great at. He's somebody that he has a lot of different options. He's a winner. People will want to go not only work for him. I'm sure part of the contract dragging out in the Giants situation was this is somebody that probably asked the Giants for a very big budget in a lot of different ways, but one of the big ways is for his assistant coaches. So when you have money, when you have prestige, and you're a winner, people want to go coach for you. And that's why Harbaugh, can go land the Todd Munkins of the world, an accomplished offensive coordinator. He has a variety of different options on the defensive side of the ball that we're kind of sifting through right now. And he's been able to develop future head coaches in the league as well. So, when you look at Harbaugh, that's when you're hiring a CEO kind of coach. And Harbaugh's good at a lot of different things, but their superpower, and Mike Tomlin has been able to do this, maybe not at the end of his Steelers tenure, but for a while at his Steelers tenure, be able to retain top-level assistant coaches and coordinators, and I think that was one of the biggest draws for the Giants in landing him.
Connor Rogers is our guest here on New York Game Day. You watch him on SNY, talking Jets. You watch him on NBC, covering the entire NFL landscape and the draft, which is where I want to go next, Connor. We got the Senior Bowl coming up this week. Hopefully everyone can make it there safely with the snowstorm around the country. But next week in particular, which players are you closely keyed in on that have a possible scenario playing out where they could be either a Jet or a Giant?
Yeah, for the Senior Bowl specifically, Jake?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting getting down there, like you said. I'm supposed to fly out there tomorrow night, and this storm is pretty crazy. But this has been an interesting year, right, because you've had a lot of guys kind of, potentially accept the invite and then drop out. And that happens every single year, but it feels like it's been harder to keep up with this year. But you look specifically, the next tier of quarterbacks who can make some noise, which is, I'm surprised that a Ty Simpson isn't going to be there unless he's still dealing with injury. There's not a lot of clarity if Garrett Nussmeier will officially go, but that opens up the door, for a Sawyer Robertson from Baylor. You look at some of the running back talent on this roster, like a Katron Allen and Nick Singleton from Penn State. Those are guys with a lot of talent. When you talk about specifically the Jets, they need safety help in the worst possible way. And maybe they can solve some of that in free agency. But one of the best safeties in this entire draft from Toledo, of all places, Toledo becoming a little bit of DBU now, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is a stud. And that's somebody that, we've seen Quinyon Mitchell, a corner from Toledo, recently go to the Senior Bowl, and I thought he was the best player on the field during practice that year. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, I think, will really, really make his presence felt throughout that entire process. And then, of course, the wide receivers can always make a lot of noise at this event because of the one-on-ones. We'll see what some of the high-level talent ultimately does down there, especially Elijah Surratt coming off a national championship season for Indiana. That's a long one, but does Casey Concepcion practice throughout the entire week? I think he could be a first-round wide receiver with big playability. Or if he falls down the board, he's an option for the Jets at 33. Or, the Giants will be looking for another receiver in this draft as well. So while there's been plenty of dropouts after accepted invites, there's still a lot of talent at this event every single year.
And any other, don't want to get too deep of a dive in the East-West game, just given, all the moving parts, players adding or leaving, but Cade Klubnik, is going to be there. Any thoughts on him or any other quarterbacks in the All-Star games?
Yeah, that was a big land for the East-West game, Club Nick. And I know he had a really, really down 2025 after everything pointed upwards for him after 2024. So, from what I've heard down there from 2 days so far, it's been a little bit of up and down for all the quarterbacks at that event. I think Klubnik is a guy that, he's just very erratic this year. For a Clemson program that it seems like all their top prospects did not take the next step going forward. Skylar Bell was practicing the first day there, the wide receiver from UConn. I think he's somebody that absolutely should have been at the Senior Bowl and could be a third or fourth round pick, maybe even earlier. Just a very, very talented playmaker from that UConn team. So, yeah, the Shrine, they've been doing a really good job the last 2 or 3 years getting some high-end talents down there that have really, really climbed in the draft rankings from their performances at that game.
Connor, with the Jets at number 2, I'm fascinated by the different paths they could go because it doesn't feel like there's that obvious, quarterback that they could take outside of Fernando Mendoza, who goes 1 to Vegas in all likelihood. At number 2, if you're the Jets, are you looking for the player who's like a superstar, highest ceiling, or are you looking for someone with a tremendously high floor so you at least get something out of this 3-14 season?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, Jake, that I think has a lot of different ways of looking at it draft by draft, because this is not this draft doesn't have necessarily, the Myles Garrett or the Chase Young, the way he was viewed. And, that next player that's not a quarterback that everybody projects as a superstar. And now I think at number 2, you do need to try to land a difference maker. I think I go back many years ago, but when the Raiders took Clelin Ferrell in the top 5, the thought of that was kind of his floor. And you saw when there's countless examples like this, but that's one that always sticks to me when talking about guys that could play on the ball, disrupt the passer, and how you project them going forward. You still need to evaluate high-end traits and how they take over the game. That's why I'm a huge fan of David Bailey from Texas Tech. He wins in a variety of different ways, rushing the passer. As the second half of the season went on, he got much better against the run to try to transform himself into a 3-down player. Ruben Bain, we know about the arm length, but he's such an overwhelming presence, his ability to convert speed to power. I like those guys a lot, and they affect the quarterback. And I know everybody's going to talk about, understandably, Arvell Reese, the off-ball linebacker from Ohio State, and the safety from Ohio State, Caleb Downs, who are both tremendous players. There'll be a lot of draft boards that have both of those guys higher than the 2 pass rushers. But, man, at the end of the day, guys that, affect the quarterback deserve to go early in this league, and there's a reason the top ones make over $40 million a year now. So Bain and Bailey, I have no problem chasing the ceiling with how those guys affect the game at number 2 overall.
How about after Mendoza? How do you see the next group of quarterbacks doing? That could change a lot between now and the draft.
I think Simpson will be the second guy, and that's not a bold, statement. The question is, how early can Simpson go? Is it 16 with the Jets? The Steelers, I believe, at 21, are they a team that falls in love with him and they decide to make a move, especially with a different coaching staff there, or do they kind of wait it out? And then you look at the Jets picking again at 33. So that's kind of the situation for Simpson right now. It's hard to see where this Trinidad Chambliss situation is going, so it's kind of hard to project him in the draft. Once again, Garrett Nussmeier is the guy that I thought could have had an excellent Senior Bowl, and I know he accepted an invite and he was on the roster, and now he's not on the website. So, and he dealt with an abdominal injury throughout this entire year that clearly hampered his play. I thought he would have been a top 45 pick if he declared last year. So I think Nussmeier, if he can get healthy and get in front of teams and throw and interview really well on the board, his dad's an offensive coordinator, he's going to be fine. The mental side of the game, he's somebody that could be that third quarterback off the board. Where's Drew Aller's health right now and his development? I didn't think Drew Aller looked very comfortable this year throwing the ball before he got hurt, but teams really liked Drew Aller before he went back to school last year. So, when you take Trinidad out of this, if he can win that lawsuit and play another year of college football, I would imagine the order of quarterbacks is something like Mendoza, Simpson, maybe a gap somewhere to Nussmeier, and then maybe another gap to Aller.
Connor, great breakdown. As always, appreciate you hopping on with us. Enjoy the games today. I'll see you next week in Mobile.
Great talking to you guys. Have a great day.
Connor Rogers.
Thanks for joining us
there. Great stuff, great insight. And, Mike, I think that's kind of the feeling, right? And we can talk more about it on the other side, but it feels like after Mendoza, it's kind of wide open for how the quarterback rankings could play out.
Yeah. And look, that'll change. I think the Trinidad Chambliss thing is fascinating just from a standpoint of, that lawsuit look, I'm not an expert, but the fact that he filed it in state court, my gut tells me he'll win it. But there's some pretty wide opinions on him, but he certainly has a lot of ability.
800-919-3776. Let's say hello to Kevin in Nutley, who is first up this segment. Kevin, thanks for making the call. You're on with Jake and Mike here on New York Game Day.
Good morning, guys. Or I guess, yeah, it's still morning. Just another depressing AFC Championship Sunday. I'm 40 now. I got the opportunity to actually be in the building for the last three. Mr. T, you've given me some of the best Jet years of my life. Let me say this. This is obviously a pipe dream. It's all, a hope and a pray, but Aaron Glenn's not going to get fired. I understand it's been year one. Jake, I know how you feel about this, obviously, but the guy that they got to try to bring in here, and again, preface it by being pipe dream, is Cliff Kingsbury. And what the Jets need to do is give him autonomy over the offense and trade every single asset that they've accumulated for Fernando Mendoza. And for the crowd that says they have so many holes, like they need to address the linebacker, the safeties, I get it, but when the Jets had a talented roster with no quarterback play, and you guys know this, you're not going anywhere in the league without a good quarterback, right? So if you can find a way, preface, pipe dream, not happening, it's Cliff Kingsbury and it's Fernando Mendoza. That's how you rebuild a culture in regards to the league with a top-of-the-line OC and a young quarterback who looks like he can play in this league and be extremely successful. And I know it's not going to happen, but those are the two names to me that can unequivocally change the course of this franchise quicker, sooner than later. I don't know, but, I look outside at the snow here, and I hope to one day, have to take a treacherous road up Route 3 to get to MetLife and watch this team play in an AFC championship at home. But that's what I got for you guys today. Enjoy the games.
Kevin, appreciate the call. Mike, your thoughts on that plan, right? We know you love Fernando Mendoza. I mean, what is too much to give up if you actually could get the Raiders to answer the phone and work out a deal?
Yeah, well, one thing I would remind the caller, and thanks for the call, is just like Kevin O'Connell, Cliff Kingsbury was on our roster on IR, sort of in our developmental program, and really proud of the fact that we sort of identify Cliff and Kevin as like future coaches, and both were incredibly well thought of in the building, and no surprise at the success that both Kevin O'Connell and Cliff Kingsbury have had in their coaching careers. And by the way, Darren Muji, Tanner Engstrand, and Kevin O'Connell were all quarterbacks at one point at San Diego State together.
They were roommates together, cool, Mike, Muji and KOC.
Yeah, kind of cool, right? So, but it just goes to show you, like, these are all developmental jobs. Like, I just remember, Cliff being in the building, like, he was on IR and he was already, like, breaking down film, and you could just tell, like, he was just born to coach. Look, I'm one, like, go get him. That's certainly been my track record when you need a quarterback. The hard part about these discussions, to be candid, is, like, you're going to make the call to the Raiders. They may not even answer the phone, right? Like, they literally may see, like, a Jet area code and not even answer it. So, the way you would have to handle it, though, is just to say, hey, look, we're not negotiating. Tell us what the bill is. Let me get with the head coach. Let me get with the owner. And we'll say yes or no. And they have, 5 first-round picks and tons of other assets. And then you just have to sit there and say, like, can Fernando Mendoza be, Matt Ryan for the next 10 years? I think he will be. But, that's, like, the fun part about this job is you can speculate till the cows come home. The question is, like, literally, Jake, do the Raiders even take the call?
I don't think they will ultimately, right? I mean, Tom Brady was just showering the praises of Fernando Mendoza. I saw in a recent interview on FS1. He, of course, will have a major say in what they do with that top pick. I mean, they were at the game that you were at on Monday watching the national championship game last week, Mike, on the field watching Fernando Mendoza. It feels like maybe if there were other quarterbacks that were legit options in this draft considered top 10 picks, then maybe they'd be more open to it. But I don't get the sense that is the case right now. And they obviously, at the end of the year, were tanking. I mean, I don't know if you could, they'll deny it till the cows come home. But, I mean, Max Crosby was so enraged he was shut down when he was healthy. He's posting videos on Instagram of him dunking a basketball to show that he could go out there and move and could play. They shut Bowers down when he was still healthy and able to play. I mean, they did everything to lose at the end of the year, not to draft a tackle or take a defensive player. To me, it was to take a quarterback. So I don't really know what you can offer unless it's something insane like you offer 5-1s, but to move up one spot, I like Fernando Mendoza, but I got 3 first-rounders in 2027. I got major questions about the entire coaching staff for the Jets. I wouldn't make that move if that's what it would take to move up just one spot.
Well, one thing about what Tom Brady said, though, is he may be doing that to create a market because he's a smart guy. He's a calculated guy. Jake, what happens if he's sitting there saying, like, we have a million holes, and if we could get 5 picks for one quarterback, next year we'll go get, fill in the blank, Lenore Sellers or Arch Manning or Dante Moore. So if we could get 5 picks for Fernando Mendoza, who I like but I don't love, I'll go out there and say all these great things about him. Like, that's where, like, I wonder if that's what he thinks or if he's just being strategic.
It's a very good point by you. I wonder if it would cost 4-1s, Mike. I mean, even if you love Fernando Mendoza, there's such a risk in that kind of move when you have all these assets to try and build out your team. And, you could be in play to get a quarterback a year from now. It might not be as good as Mendoza. We have no idea how it shakes out. But I don't know if that's, like, in the best interest of the Jets long term to make that aggressive of a play for a guy who I think is very good. But, I use Trevor Lawrence as an example. Generational, right? Well, it took his 3rd coach for him to start actually playing that way. And, like, I don't know what Fernando Mendoza is going to be next year. Frank Reich is his offensive coordinator, and the issues the Jets are having now, I don't know if, like, the Jets are set up to, like, make that bold of a play when you're not convinced you necessarily have your long-term coaching staff here for that quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's I would look at it like, again, when you have an opportunity to get a quarterback, you just don't know, like, when you're going to be in that situation. Like, too many things happen. Like, if I said to you even literally 3 weeks ago that the Ravens, Steelers, and Bills were making a head coaching change, I mean, you would have thought I'm nuts. Like, no one thought all 3 of those would be open. And I'm saying, like, a year from now, who knows? So if the price is reasonable and you think he has the talent, character, and physical size to be, have sustained success, like, I would pay something that was, a little bit of a premium just because you just never know. And I happen to think Mendoza just, anytime you can elevate a program and you can make those around you better, that to me is the definition of greatness.